What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 713. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you've been cubing it up in multiple ways.
Yeah, I've been playing both Vintage and Arena Cube here, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, it's really, we've entered the golden age of Cube here. We've got the Vintage Cube up on Magic Online and the Arena Cube up on Arena. And that led us to thinking that, well, this week is actually reserved for the set review coming up in a couple of days once the set is fully revealed to us. We thought we would jump on and do a bonus episode for you because there is also an Arena Open on the weekend that has Arena Cube as the format. And if that's the case and you haven't really dipped your toe into the Arena Cube, well, we thought we would do our best to get you up to speed and hopefully give you the best shot of taking home the big prize money on Sunday for the Arena Open. So we're just doing a bonus episode. We're just going to jump right into that this time. And we're going to go over some of our favorite cards, the big picture view, and then we're even going to do an Arena Cube draft at the end where we do the draft portion to sort of give you an idea of what we're looking at and what kind of cards jump out to us. So we want to say quick thanks to our patrons for supporting us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources. Thank you to each and every one of you who do so. We really appreciate it. Okay, Luis, where do you want to start with the Arena Cube? We dove deep on one of the colors for Vintage Cube last week, but Vintage Cube is a very different beast than Arena Cube.
Yeah, so the Arena Cube is always been interesting. It has felt like it's a bit lower powered than the Vintage Cube because it is. It used to be more akin to like not even a modern cube, maybe a little less powerful than that. But if you haven't Arena Cubed in a while, and I'm speaking a lot to the people who maybe are coming back because of the Arena Open. I know that's part of the reason that, it's hard to draw my attention away from Vintage Cube, but Arena Cube manages to do that because I love playing in the Opens. So the Arena Cube has gotten a lot stronger. It has gotten quite a bit more powerful. Like the best cards in the Arena Cube used to be something like Elspeth Conquers Death, right? Mm-hmm. This is like a 5-mana bomb, and it's a strong card, Torrential Gearhulk, and those are still good cards, trust me. The best cards now are like Swords to Plowshares, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, like Shieldred. The power level has gone up a lot.
Yeah, and it's important to note that, what was it what are the sets called that they've put in?
It's like the Historic or Explorer anthologies is kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, those ones that have put in older cards that are more powerful. And anytime that you see any subset of Magic cards, whether it's a constructed format or a cube or a limited format, if you expand that pool of cards, right, you will always see better cards rise to the top and the format will get usually cheaper, not financially, but like you'll spend less mana for the effects that you want, and while also getting more powerful over time. The more cards you add, the lower to the ground a format gets, the faster usually it gets, and the cheaper it gets to do things. So when you see 5-mana sorcery speed effects that are powerful, like ECD, those start to fade a bit, when they're facing down cards like Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, and we're seeing the exact same thing happen in the Vintage Cube. So it's like no real surprise that that's where we're at. And it makes sense, right? A 3-mana card, a 2-mana card, these are naturally better than more expensive cards. And then, so when you add more cards to the format, more of the good cards become the cheaper cards. That's right. And that is very much what has happened. It's happened in pretty sweeping ways. You don't have to go back to many cube iterations to kind of find a much different landscape. But with these old card drops, you definitely see the changes. How would you describe the cube from a big picture perspective as far as the strategies that people employ? Is it combo? Is it aggro? Is it creatures? Is it spells? Like, how do you break that down?
Yeah. So one of the things that's cool is there are some amount of combo decks and there's definitely control decks, but in general, I consider this a pretty creature centric cube. There's a lot of the good cards are creatures.
Yep.
And you can build your deck knowing that, where you're going to play a lot of creature removal in your deck. You're almost always going to have targets. It's rare that you're not going to have any targets for that. And then B, like playing a creature-based deck is totally fine. You don't have to, it's not like if you end up with a bunch of creatures in your deck, you've made a mistake. So I still find, even though the power level has gone up, it's a very play to the board format. There's not a lot of there's not storm combo. There's not infinite combos really. I don't know if there's actually any actual infinite combos even in the cube. I find that interacting like normal Magic does, generally works out.
Okay, yeah, that's of course really good to know, because there's sort of multiple levels to creatures, right? The baseline is what does it do on the board? But then when you get to curated subsets of cards like cubes are, most of the time creatures have ETB abilities. They enter the battlefield and they trigger and they do something, right? That is very, very common to have creatures that give you something simply for resolving them, or even in some cases just for casting them. Then the next level beyond that is repeat, right? How can I take advantage of the fact that these creatures sometimes die, go to the graveyard, maybe I could get them back. Maybe I can blink them. Maybe I can return them to my hand. Maybe I can copy them, right? And all of these different ways to re-trigger enters the battlefield abilities ended up becoming really important. And they end up dictating a lot of the strategies around creature-centric formats like this. And that's definitely true here. It's also true in the Vintage Cube as well, where, it's all fun in games to do the thing once, but it's real fun if you can repeat it.
Yeah, one of the funny things, actually, as I've been playing tons of Vintage Cube, is watching a lot of things I would have said were true about Vintage Cube and not true about Arena Cube are now kind of true of both cubes. And what I mean by that is the Vintage Cube's also a lot more creature-centric now.
It is.
I used to not even look at a card like Infernal Grasp, and now I'm like, oh yeah, 5th pick Infernal Grasp. I'll put that in my deck and I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, Snuff Out's high on your list now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's for sure. And go ahead.
Oh, it's just ended up in a spot where both of these cubes end up being a lot more about the board. The Vintage Cube more than it used to be. The Arena Cube actually a little bit less than it used to be, but still it's quite a bit about that.
One of the things that stood out to me about the Arena Cube and prior iterations kind of before this latest wave of really efficient cards came in was that it felt big. It felt like the things you were doing were expensive. You were getting up into the 4, 5, 6 mana slot before you really started to hammer somebody. And it felt a little bit like kind of battle cruiser style Magic, where it was a bunch of really good cards. And the real challenge, at least the way I saw it, from your perspective, was to be able to cast your spells. So I had a focus on mana fixing, and in some cases mana ramp, to make sure that I could deploy my spells consistently and if possible even a little sooner than normally would be on schedule. And then ways to stop your opponent from doing so as well. And I found in the earlier iterations that the best way to do that was via counter magic. It was somebody's going to try to resolve a 5, 6, or 7 drop. And if I can spend 2 or 3 mana to counter it, I'm going to value that very highly, because now all of a sudden I can take the lead. The other thing that I looked for a lot was the ability to get some type of engine going. I don't mean a combo. I don't mean like a specific, I win the game combo, but something that could take me from simply having cast my spells, generated an advantage from them, but then to repeat it, similar to what I said about the creatures. Some way to repeat the process over again and really bury my opponent in my advantages. But the thing that stood out to me, though, was that many of those decks felt like castable piles of good cards rather than anything that was super coherent. Not every deck was like that. There were definitely some archetypes. Blue-red stood out as one, for example, that was very spell-centric and synergistic. But there were many where it was just like, which colors am I, I'll probably play 3 colors. Which one am I going to play? And how many, hammers can I put into this deck, and can I deploy them in time? That seems to have changed, with these more efficient cards coming out.
Yeah, I think that it's not haymakers. It's not quite the singular game plan that you used to be focused on. It's a lot more back and forth. And there are some cards that will completely, dominate the game. Shieldred is a good example, right? Mm-hmm. An unanswered Shieldred wins you the game in 2 turns. Mm-hmm. And Yeah, sure. When you play that card, it can be kind of about that card. Primeval Titans in the cube. It's a good card. It's one that you ramp into, and then if it's not answered, it wins. But a lot of the game is about like, I'm gonna kill your creature, and then you're gonna call a guns command, killing my creature, getting yours back, and then I'm gonna cast Electrolyze, and or maybe you'll Swords to Plowshares my thing. I'll cast it's kind of like a Skyclave Apparition to kill your Planeswalker, and there's not that many things that end the game on the spot. You're not going to see, to look at a Vintage Cube example, Splinter Twin Kiki Jiki. You're not going to see Shieldred plus Wheel of Fortune. And even in the Arena Cube, the closest you can get is like if you go Torrential Gearhulk back Magma Opus, that line of play usually, if not ends the game, hastens it towards that point. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, it's just not like that. And there's also the people out there trying to attack you. So
okay.
You are definitely just a lot more back and forth. And I think the kind of the selling point I would have if of Arena Cube versus Vintage Cube is this is a lot more about interaction. There's not as many, 10s on a scale of 1 to 10 that just like there's no Time Walk, Snapcaster, Time Walk sort of plays.
Right.
And even when your opponent gets 2 good exchanges in a row, maybe you then play that Elspeth Conquers Death we talked about, and they don't quite kill you, and then you play a thing that stops their thing, and now your Elspeth, gets back your Teferi that they killed earlier, and all of a sudden you're ahead. Right. And there's less hammer blows that kind of prevent you from doing that.
So is it an arms race where you're trying to go bigger? You trying to go under? Like, do you have you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we talk about a lot in Magic is like you want to be one level ahead of your opponent. And that actually is kind of true here, where like if your opponent is casting 3 and 4 mana spells, if you can cast 5 and 6 mana spells, that you often will get an advantage there, because a 3 and 4 mana spell is not usually going to end the game before you cast your Elspeth Conquers Death into Primeval Titan, or Goldspan Dragon into Nissa, or some big plays like that. But if they're 2 levels lower, if they're the one playing Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Goblin Rabblemaster type cards, then you might find yourself dead before your Primeval Titan does anything. Whereas the 3 and 4 mana player, is, the Asika's Chariot player, is going to be a lot happier. Like they got to stabilize. There's a bit of that going on here, where if you go too big, you're going to get raced. You're going to get, you're not going to make it to that point in the game because they're going to go under you. Mm-hmm. And there, we'll talk about archetypes, but there is good white aggro, there's good red aggro, there's even kind of bad black aggro, and those decks can definitely punish you for having too many 4, 5, 6 mana plays stuck in your hand. That being said, if you do play like the more mid-rangey game, you do kind of have to watch out, because the person playing ramp can just go over the top, and there's a bit of a meta game of like mid-range, ramp, aggro with like different decks that are like kind of on the different borders in between, right? There's like the white black tokens deck that can kind of cobble together these aggressive draws, but also can play a pretty respectable mid-range game with Lingering Souls and Yawgmoth, and that deck can beat a blue-white control deck going to the late game, because look at the 2 cards I named. Lingering Souls and Yawgmoth combined especially draws you a ton of cards, and you can outgrind someone. So there is like a sliding scale of like, where do you want to be? And the answer is you usually want to be near what your opponent's doing, but a little bit above them.
Yeah.
And, every now and then there's some cards that, like I said, there's not very many 10s, and that's true, but an aggro deck that plays Fable of the Mirror Breaker can beat a mid-range deck very easily.
Right.
And there are some cards that are really, really strong. I also want to give a shout out to one of the most fun cards in Magic that is in the cube, Oracle of the Alpha.
Oh, yeah. I loved drafting that in the last iteration of this cube.
Right. So it's 2 and a blue for a 2/3 flyer. And when it enters the battlefield, you shuffle the power 9 into your deck. So that's the 5 Moxes, Black Lotus, Time Walk, Ancestral Recall, Time Twister, and Red Attacks. You scry 1. Gives you that little extra. Can I get there? It's confusing exactly how good this card is. I think it's good.
Especially, I also think it's good.
Yeah, especially in a deck that, you're blue because you're casting this, right? If you have this card, prioritizing ways to draw and look at extra cards is pretty nice. Expressive Iteration, Consider, any of that kind of stuff is good, because you now have Time Walk and Ancestral Recall in your deck and you want to find them. On the other hand, you also have a bunch of extra lands in your deck, so it kind of balances. But this card is just one of the most fun experiences you can have in Magic. And if you can ever get multiple ETB triggers off of this by bringing it back, by copying it, any of those things, Now you have 2 time twisters in your deck, and you can kind of just, loop them if you have ways to draw enough cards. And
yeah. The design on that card, it seems really simple, right? It just seems like, let's just throw the Power 9 in somebody's deck and see what happens. But when you actually play it in a competitive setting, there's 2 things that jump out as like, oh, this is actually really cool. And one of them, you mentioned that there's a ratio there. Like it doesn't actually throw your land to spell ratio off that far. It does, but it's not like you're just adding a bunch of spells to your deck, which might be too good, or adding a bunch of lands, which you wouldn't want to do. They're moxes, of course, but they are functionally lands. And then the other one is the Time Twister, where you're like, well, Time Twister is generally not that good. It's just, unless you're set up to abuse it or take advantage of it, it's a equal opportunity, Time Twister, and your opponent gets reloaded as well. So there's a lot of times where it's just really disadvantageous to even cast it. But the fact that you just loaded up on all those free artifact things goes, okay, well, Time Twister does look good now that I've got all 5 Moxen and a Black Lotus, in my deck. So anyway, a little aside there, but yeah, that card is really cool. And that's one of the few times when they've taken advantage of the arena specific mechanics that I've actually liked it.
Yeah, look, we bring up our criticisms when we have them, and we have to give props when we have them too. And I think this card is a masterpiece of design. It's exactly what I like out of designs. If you've gotten a sense of my design sensibilities over listening to the show, or in your case, just talking to me, I like that it's a simple text box. It doesn't require a lot of burden on either player to play with or understand, and it's awesomely incredible fun. Like it's fun, and it's even deep because there's the interaction of oh, I have extra lands in my deck now, but Time Twister is really good with all these moxes, and if I get 2 of these, I can cycle the Time Twisters, and it just has all this emergent gameplay with very few words. So that's exactly what I like. And look, if you're playing in the Arena Open, I really can't give you a good gauge on where this card lands. I know I'll be taking Fable the Mirrorbreaker, Swords to Plowshares over it, but should you take this card over an average card or a slightly above average card? I don't know. I honestly don't. I haven't played with it enough to get a good sense. My guess is if you have a lot of card draw, this card is pretty good. But if you don't, the card is not at the peak.
Yeah, and I definitely don't consider it. I don't know. When I see it, I think I want to play that. I don't ever really get a sense that I'm getting an insane advantage off of it. But the thing that I think about it is there are a few cards in there, like Time Walk, that you can just got there, right? That are really, really powerful. And then the rest are mostly a wash, I think. I didn't fundamentally change and Ancestral as well, I should say.
But to your point though, Ancestral is, yes, more powerful, but at the point in the game where you draw Ancestral off Oracle to Alpha, how much better is it than a 4-mana draw 3, which is a totally fair card?
That's true.
Whereas Time Walk is a very different animal.
Yeah. But but I do feel like it does benefit you. I don't think it's one of the best cards in the cube or a bomb or anything.
Right. That's kind of where I land too.
Yeah. What about archetypes? So, we were saying how sometimes this cube can lend itself to a bit of a punching match between just raw power of cards, but there are discernible archetypes in here too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that there's exactly 10 like the goal or whatever, the going into every format, right? They're like, oh well, here's each color pair, here's what they do. But there's a number of different ones. There's 2 kind of like big umbrellas, really 3 actually. The first one is blue X control. And what I mean by that is pairing the blue kind of themes of card draws and counter spells with a color that provides removal. So this is not blue-green, but it's all the other colors. There's the blue-white deck that has like Wraths and Swords to Plowshares and Skyclave Apparition and a bunch of good blue control cards. There's blue-black, which just has tons of removal and discard, right? It has like Thoughtseize. It has a couple of its Planeswalkers or Scarab God, but mainly black's bringing removal. And then there's blue-red, which has a bunch of burn spells. And blue-red also has a different deck, as does blue-white. But strictly talking about control, you can draft a viable control deck with all 3 of those color pairs. Blue-green is just not a control color pair. Like that's a ramp color pair.
Right.
I haven't found, just that the problem is green doesn't add anything blue wants except ramp. So If you're pairing those two, that's all you're getting.
You end up being 3 or 4 or 5 colors or something.
Right. And that's like the second umbrella, which is the green X ramp decks, which uses the various green cards that ramp your mana, fix your mana, and put extra lands into play, all those things, with usually blue, because blue offers a lot of the best big mana rewards, whether that be card draw, whether that be counters, or things like Sublime Epiphany, or red, because red has some awesome stuff to ramp into. Red is actually a really good pairing because I love playing green ramp with big red finishers like Itali, Glorybringer, Goldspan Dragon.
Yep.
While also playing cards like Unholy Heat and Abrade. Red adds like both ends of the spectrum, and green fills out the middle with the 3 and 4 mana ramp sort of action. You can also do green black or green white. Those are totally viable. Like basically you pair any good high cost cards with green, and green can get them out a little sooner. Yeah. And that can be a good strategy. Yeah,
they have Gilded Goose, Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic.
I'm going to talk about Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystic later because those are a separate thing. But they also have a lot of ramp, like, whether that's the ramp creatures or ramp spells or cards like Oracle and Moldiah that let you play extra lands.
Okay.
Some more specific archetypes, there's Blue-White Blink. And so this is specifically pairing cards like Restoration Angel with creatures with ETB abilities. And this deck can also play somewhat aggressively. You can just play cheap, a cheap flyer, a 3-drop, and then into Resto, and then you can clearly see how you're beating your opponent down. And that can kind of easily go a little higher curve and be controlling, or a little lower curve and be aggressive, depending on kind of what you're looking to do. There's and this is actually an archetype which I thought was among the best in previous iterations. I don't know. I think it's very good still. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best. I'm not that confident because I've only done a couple drafts since it's come back. But Blue-White Blink certainly very good. And once you start picking up a couple good ETB creatures, then you should be looking for the blink effects and trying to go into this deck.
Yeah, very efficient.
Yorion is great in this deck. Blue-red spells. So this specifically, there is the control deck, which I mentioned, which is trying to pair, again, counters, card draw, removal, all that. But there's also kind of more spell-based deck that has like the Third Path Iconoclast, Young Pyromancer type creatures that make tokens, when you cast a spell. That's a little more aggressive. They put in cards like Terramander. That's the 1-mana 1/1 that can turn into a 5/5. I don't think that card actually really works. It's just not good enough. Nope. But think Delver of Secrets decks in any constructed format. Blue-red can kind of play like that.
Yeah.
Where it has a couple counters, it has some removal, it has some face burn, and it's trying to play low curve red and blue creatures and then pair those with that counter, bounce, and burn to finish the game.
Right. Haughty Djinn is one of the ones that can do really well there. Mm-hmm.
The Black-White deck has gotten a bit better. I mean, I mentioned Yawgmoth and Lingering Souls. Both those cards have gone a long way in improving what this deck is doing. And you are trying to just grind out your opponent, Bastion of Remembrance, that kind of stuff. And this deck likes to play against aggro and mid-range and dislikes playing against control unless it has a good control tools, like having a little bit of discard, having a Yawgmoth, like a way to draw a bunch of cards, can help here. Because what you're really good at is clogging the ground. You're less good at playing against a bunch of Wraths and Torrential Gearhulks. Then you have kind of the great equalizer, and I think that without these decks, this would be a much weaker play experience, and that's aggro. Mono red and mono white are the two best aggressive decks. Again, I strongly advise you not to play red white aggro. Like the lands are generally not there. There's fewer good lands than in Vintage Cube, especially since there's way more coming to play tap lands, which aggro does not like. And stumbling on your curve is just negates one of the big advantages of playing aggro, which is you're supposed to beat them before they can cast all the spells in their hand. So if you can get into mono red or mono white, both these decks have an extremely high win percentage. I think my recollection is that the mono white was better, but I think they're both viable.
Yeah, here's the 1-drops for white, just to give you an idea of what they're. And if you don't know these cards, sorry, but I'm just going to read them fast. Banalish Night Counselor. It's a 1-mana 2/1 with extra stuff. Dauntless Bodyguard, Ephemerate, Esper Sentinel, which is in the Vintage Cube. Giver of Runes, also in the Vintage Cube. Legion's Landing, that's a nice one. Mana Tithe, Portable Hull, Selfless Savior, Soldier of the Pantheon, another 1-mana 2/1. Swords to Plowshares, the Goat Thraben Inspector, Usher of the Fallen. So those are your one drops. You can tell where this deck's trying to go, and just like a little hint of the first two drop is the Danto Vanguard. Like this is very low to the ground, much lower than people who are playing a bunch of tap lands and trying to get their mana under them and trying to ramp up to something or set up for something that costs 5, 6, 7 mana. I mean, these things are pounding you senseless in the meantime. You absolutely have to respect these archetypes.
Yeah. And this is why when you watch me draft this, because I have like some draft videos going up, I might have time to stream it. No promises there. Mm-hmm. I'll be deep in a blue-red control deck and just snapping up Unholy Heat and Abrade and, like Flame Slash type cards at a very high premium, because I just know that the aggro decks are very good, and if you don't respect them, you will lose to them.
Yes.
There also, like I mentioned before, is some support for black aggro, but I really just don't believe it. I don't know. I'll have to. I'm going to put on my Marshall hat here and say someone's got to beat me with it before I believe it, because I played against a bunch of black decks playing 1-mana 2/1s that come back from the graveyard, and like the problem is the power level's lower than the white cards, and there's no burn, so it's not like you're actually closing out the game. I don't know. I haven't been impressed. But,
no, yeah. I feel like there's a couple of cards that are in here to support other archetypes, and that people sometimes like Gutter Bones, Cult Conscript, these cards that you can get back from your graveyard. But I mean, if to do the same example that we just did on white, I can list the black one drops for you. And there's only a few that even have power and toughness. It's not the same thing at all. The Blood Chief's Thirst, Crypt Breaker, which isn't a particularly aggressive card. Cult Conscript, okay, fine. Cut Down, Evolve Sleeper, all right, sure. Fatal Push, Gutter Bones, Inquisition, Mind Spike, Shambling Gas, Thoughtseize. Like, yeah. This is not the same world that we're talking about here, when we looked at white and how much they're trying to beat down. So I'm with you. You're going to have to beat me with that deck before I start drafting it. If I'm drafting aggro, I want to be white and then red.
Mm-hmm. I was going to move on to...
I have two notes.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so the first one was the blue-red spells deck. A few iterations ago, I used to be a huge fan of drafting that deck because you could get Mizzix's Mastery, and you could use Magma Opus or any number of things to kind of ramp up and get a early Opus or even kick the Mastery and just do all of the things. But it looks like they've taken it out of the cube. So that's something that if you do have experience in prior iterations of the cube, and that was a go-to archetype for you, it's significantly weaker without the presence of Mastery. And then the other thing is that there's a quick way for you to get to know the archetypes here as well, that's similar to what we would do with the uncommon signposts, or the signpost uncommons as we call them for the set reviews, which is if you go onto Arena and you just click on the thing for Arena Cube, if you look over on the left, there's a big button that says, I'll just look at what the button says. It says View Card Pool. And that'll just show you every card in the cube kind of, 3 high on your screen. And if you scroll all the way over to where the gold cards are, you can get an idea for what the archetype's doing pretty well. It's similar to, if not even more informative than a signpost uncommon would be. As an example, I can read the blue-red ones: Expressive Iteration, Third Path, Iconoclast, Electrolyze, Lutri, Prismari Command, and Magma Opus. So it's like, all right, we're doing spells. Like, that's it. That's what we're doing. That is what this archetype is. Now, we already told you that one, but, looking at the blue-black, for example, Kaito Shizuki, Thief of Sanity, Hostage Taker, Kaito Dancing Shadow, Scarab God, and Gyruda. So again, you can get a really clean idea of, these are value. Every one of these is a value card. Every one of these is dealing with my opponent's creatures while also, messing with or adding to my card count, etc. And so you can go through each of these to try to get an idea for yourself, what these archetypes might be doing if you haven't had much experience with the Arena Cube. Okay, so let's talk card level here, Luis. And I think that you actually came up with this list of some of the cards that you think are most important from each color.
Yeah, these are kind of like a list of the best cards of each color. Obviously not definitive, but I just to give you a sense of like kind of what each color is working with. So white has some good 5-drops. It has Archangel Avacyn and Elspeth Conquers Death. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of tied for 5th. So, white gets 6. Actually, white gets 7. I'll tell you why in a sec.
Okay.
Lingering Souls is just an awesome new addition. So Lingering Souls is a card that I frequently splash for in Vintage Cube, especially if you can splash the black part. It's so much of less of a liability, because imagine it, you just can cast the white card or the white part in general, but then sometimes you cast you flash it back at some point, but you're not in like a huge hurry to do so. That makes this a kind of a bit of a freebie, and it's really powerful to get 4 1/1 tokens out of one card, especially 3 broken up into 3 and 2 mana. It's really cheap. Restoration Angel is just exactly what this kind of color pair wants to do, or white combined with blue, though there's ETBs in every color. And it's just a 4-mana 3/4 flyer that comes out at instant speed, which is pretty good in this format because people just attack you with 2/2s and 3/3s all the time.
Yeah. And we mentioned before about the creatures, most of them having ETBs. So that's, yeah.
Skyclave Apparition is another very good one. This answers everything, and unlike almost every white card that has like most of these words on it, it doesn't come back. The card that you exile, they get a token with stats equal to its cost, which is basically always worth, not guaranteed, but very close to. So when you blink it, you get to get rid of their Chandra forever, and blink something else. There's just so much you can do with it. And it's just a good play. And it's great in aggro. It's probably better in aggro even than control, because the drawback of giving them a creature later doesn't matter as much. But either way, it's fantastic. The best white card, though, is unquestionably Swords to Plowshares. And this is a card I think you would take over. I think that might be the best card in the entire cube.
It's so out of place with these cards, right? It's so much better.
It's a 1-mana removal spell that not only is instant speed, not only kills anything you want, like there's no restriction of any kind, it also exiles. And the drawback of, in quotes, is that they gain some life. It doesn't matter. Plus, it's more of an advantage than a drawback because you can swords your own creatures if you need to.
That's right. And save yourself from a potential lethal attack. Yeah, swords is incredible. It does feel out of place in the cube. Like it feels like what it is, which is a card from a very different time.
Yeah. It completely is. And it's really funny that it's in the cube, and it's a great card.
What do you think the best 1-drop creature is? Your choices are Thraben Inspector, Usher of the Fallen, Soldier of the Pantheon, Selfless Savior, Giver of Runes, Esper Sentinel, Dauntless Bodyguard, and Banalish Knight Counselor.
Well, I mean, the best one I think is Thraben Inspector.
So
that is the overall best one. If you're aggro, you probably want one of the 2-power ones over Thraben Inspector, but it's not even always the case.
Okay. Now you had an honorable mention here for best white cards.
Yeah. So Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, is a little bit more narrow than these other cards, but is about as good as it gets if you're aggressive. So I just want to note that like one of the reasons to play white is if you open an early Thalia, and going white aggro can be a really strong play, because it's maybe not as good as it is in Vintage Cube because there's more people playing spells that are or creature spells than non-creature spells than in that cube. But it's still just like some decks are just going to see that. You play against blue-white control and you play this on the play, that they're really going to have a hard time winning.
Yeah, always one of the most impressive cards in any cube that it's in. What about blue?
So blue actually, though I think blue is a good color, it's actually fairly deep. I think blue's best cards actually are lagging, just like in the Vintage Cube. The recent cards they're getting are not as good. Like I think Malevolent Hermit is great. Torrential Gearhulk is a great 6-mana play. So is Sublime Epiphany. Mm-hmm. We talked about Oracle Alpha as an awesome card. I think Counterspell is the best blue card. Just blue counter any spell is very strong.
Yeah.
But I overall look at blue and I'm like, yeah, none of these cards are cards I'm like super stoked to first pick. Whereas the best card in every other color, maybe not green, is a card I'm like thrilled to take early.
Yeah. There's some good stuff, like you said, and some stuff that also performs a little better in this cube than it does in others. Like you can get a Time Warp here. There's Shark Typhoon, which actually is decent here, and in the other cube, it's very medium. You mentioned Sublime Epiphany. these are the sort of the hallmarks of the older versions of the cube, which still hold over and are still worth going for. But, these are the haymakers, right? This type of card that if you get off a Sublime Epiphany and get to do 3 or 4 of its modes, you're in great shape for sure. You also get some old favorites like Muldrifter. Narset Parter of Veils is here as well, which can be quite strong. Vendilion Click, there's some good stuff, but I agree with you. This stuff is not it's not just like, well, you have to be blue at all.
And I want to specifically mention Narset and Vendilion Click. These cards are quite strong in the Vintage Cube and quite a bit less strong in the Arena Cube. Just Vendilion Click is less good when people are brawling with decently sized creatures, and they're also less of on the complete synergy train. And then Narset is certainly a lot less good when there's way more people attacking Narset, putting creatures on the board. Narset does nothing to protect herself, and of course, Narset doesn't stop as many cards as she does in the Vintage Cube. Plus, there's no draw 7. So yes, look, I'm going to play Narset in my blue-white control deck or blue-red spells deck. But I'm not going to expect Narset to be the bomb that she is in Vintage Cube.
What about Black?
Black has some interesting ones. So Black has Ophiomancer. That's another card that kind of stands out. It's funny because my opinion of it has gone up in Vintage Cube, but it's not, it's
in
not
the
a
sense
bomb.
that you actually play it sometimes now.
I used to basically never play it. I think that Ophiomancer is, you will be surprised at how good it is if you haven't played with it in the Arena Cube.
For the same reasons you just talked about with Narset, right? Just with more creatures around, it gets better. Yeah,
and Ophiomancer is completely oppressive. This card could not be printed in Standard. It is that good. It makes it, if you don't know what it does, just to point it out, it's 2 and a black for a 2/2, but at the beginning of each upkeep, if you don't control any snakes, you make a 1/1 Death Touch snake, which means you play it past the turn, you get a 1/1 Death Touch, and now if your opponent attacks and trades for it, you just get 1 back on your turn.
Yeah.
The card is just completely out of bounds. Yeah. And I think that Ophiomancer just makes it so attacking on the ground is a fool's errand. So Ophiomancer is a very strong card, and one that I'm going to take early when I see it. These aren't in any order, except I wanted to point out the best one, which Ophiomancer is not the best black card. Mm-hmm. There's Urborg Scavengers. This is a new one. It's 2 and a black for a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, so like a Titan trigger, you can exile a card in a graveyard. If it's a creature and has the ability, it steals that ability. So if you exile a creature with hexproof, it has hexproof. If you exile a creature with flying, it has flying, and that stacks up. So you end up with a bunch of abilities on your card.
And it gets counters each time too, right?
Yeah, and a +1/+1 counter. So it always gets a +1/+1 counter, and it stacks abilities. So it's 3 mana for a 3/3 that might immediately get an ability. Then it immediately attacks the first time as a 4/4. Also, you can get haste. You can get all the abilities basically. So you end up in a spot where for 3 mana, sometimes you end up with 5/5 hexproof lifelink flying or whatever combination.
Yeah, that for 3 mana, that's insane.
Or 3 mana, right?
Yeah.
And I think Urborg Scavengers is, if you haven't seen the card before, it is very good. It gets better when you have cards with that ability.
I haven't played this card yet, so I will. That's a good tip. I will keep my eye out for it.
Yawgmoth Thran Position is another one that's very good. You have to do some work, but it's a super powerful card.
Yep.
And then Thoughtseize is great. You almost always want to play this card. The fact that it causes a bit of life loss is just not that big of a deal. And the best card, of course, is Shieldred. I think Shieldred's better than Thoughtseize. I don't think it's crazy to consider Thoughtseize close to Shieldred. I think they are close, but I think that Shieldred is just the best. A 4/5 Death Touch stops aggro in its tracks, and if you end up playing against a control deck, they can't draw cards anymore. It does everything that you want it to do. Every deck fears it, and so you end up basically having a hard time battling it no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm sure listeners have sorted out, but because you said Death Touch, but that's Shieldred the Apocalypse. There is actually just regular Shieldred in the cube, which is a lot worse.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. Some interesting cards that I've seen here and there that kind of catch my eye. Breach the Multiverse for 7 mana. when people are doing real powerful stuff.
For.
Yeah. So maybe something to ramp into or to be a finisher for your control deck, something like that. What about red?
So red is one of the big winners over the last couple iterations of the cube because it already had Seasoned Pyromancer, right? That's been around for a bit. That card's great. It's got the double dragons, Glorybringer and Goldspan Dragon, which are both fantastic.
Best friends.
Glorybringer, I think, is better because it just has a bigger impact on the board, but they're both just really, really good. And I'd play them in aggro. I'd play them in mid-range. I'd play them in control. Like, there's just no losing with them. Like, I'm not saying you'll never lose if you cast one. I'm saying there's no bad deal. Like, no matter what you're trying to do, they'll help you accomplish it pretty much.
Yeah, especially if there's a planeswalker rich environment, Glorybringer's devastating.
Yeah. And then Lightning Bolt, of course, the classic. And there's a bunch of red burn spells, but of course Lightning Bolt is still the best. But it's not even the best red card. The best red card goes to Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is the only card which I would consider close to Swords to Plowshares in terms of like the title of best.
Wow. Okay. So huge props for Fable here.
Yeah.
It does shine in environments like this. I mean, it shines everywhere it's been printed, but this is a really good spot for it.
Yeah. Fable is just does everything. It's just so good. And I think that Fable is the kind of card that you would be extremely happy to take early and kind of build around it as best you can.
And just to get an idea again for, I don't know why, but I've just been kind of looking at the 1-drops here as we've been going, and, I'll read them out to you here for red, and you can start to get a feel for, is this all in aggressive, all haste creatures and burn spells? Is there some other stuff going on? And the cards are Dragon Master Outcast, which is kind of an outcast usually, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Faithless Looting, Fanatical Firebrand, Grim Lavamancer, Kamano Faces Kakazan, Bolt, Monastery Swift Spear, Pillar of Flame, Play with Fire, Rabbit Battery, Spikefield Hazard, Strangle, Unholy Heat, Vindictive Flame Stoker. That's the last 1-drop. So, yeah, there's definitely, you've got your Channelers, your Firebrand, your Swift Spear, your Kamano Faces Kakazan. There's some aggressive 1-drops here, no doubt about it. But there's some other stuff too, right? It's not just those things. Faithless Looting, you don't usually play in your mono red deck. Dragon Master Outcast, you don't either, right? A couple of burn spells here, fine. But it's not only that, it's just leaning heavily in that direction. Yeah.
And I actually think red is the best color at killing creatures, except when playing against specifically like big green creatures.
Mm-hmm. And you got to get them dead before.
Red has great removal at 1, 2, and 3 mana. So, you can really go red for a good control element while as you said, having a decent aggro strategy as well.
What's your take on Magda Brazen Outlaw?
Really, really good in aggro. Playable in mid-range, not good in control, but it's a very strong card. It's it's no Ragavan. It's twice the mana for half the effect. But if you play Magda, I know it's really funny, right? If you play Magda and can end up in a spot where you get an unopposed hit or 2, you're going to get a significant advantage out of that.
Yeah, I like it as a 2-drop in either an aggro deck or if you're facing down a slow deck. It's a real pain for them, right? Like if they're kind of trying to set up their mana, play tap lands, do rampy stuff, and you go turn 2 Magda, it's a problem for them. Like you could definitely just outrun them. And then, honorable mention to, is it just like the B+ for all B+ ever, Bone Crusher Giant? It's just like every format it's ever been printed in, it's just like good and like sees play and like everybody plays it and it never gets cut from a deck. It's just funny. It's just everywhere.
Bone Crusher was like the last card I cut off the list, honestly. It's always good. And there's a lot of creatures it can kill. And it's just a good aggressive card. It's a good defensive card. It just, like you said, it's never dissatisfying, but it just gets completely dumpstered by Fable in the head-to-head comparison.
Yeah. Same mana, slightly different effect. What about green?
So green is interesting because it's got good cards at each point in the curve. I actually have a 3, 4, 5, 6 here for you. It's Tireless Tracker on 3, which is a card that can single-handedly take over the game. It just provides you a steady stream of cards, which fuels itself to get more lands, to get more clues, and just becomes like a 7/6. There's Oracle on 4, which a little worse than she used to be. I used to be a huge Oracle Moldiah fan, and I've kind of cooled off a little bit, both here and in the Vintage Cube. It just, I feel like 4 mana cards need to do more than they used to.
Yeah, and there's no fetches here, right? So
yeah,
that makes it worse too.
There's Fabled Passage, but yes. Then on 5, there's Nissa Who Shakes the World, which I think is the best of all of these. That's the 5 mana planeswalker that immediately is like letting you attack with a 3/3 vigilance, getting you tons of mana, all that stuff. And then on 6, there's Primeval Titan, which there's a couple different kind of spell lands in the cube, not as many as in Vintage Cube, but still some good ones. And they all, I think, are slightly worse than the best green cards. And that's Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves, with a slight shout out to Gilded Goose, but I think Gilded Goose is quite a bit worse than them, because you can only tap Gilded Goose for mana once before having to reset it. When Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves have the kind of unique effect of, you play it on turn 1 and you can play a 3-drop on turn 2 and a 4-drop on turn 3, and that's so dramatically different than accelerating on turn 2 into 4. So
yeah, and these type of effects, there's not very many of these in this cube.
No, there's not, and that's part of why I consider these super high value. So I think that one of the big allures of drafting green is starting with Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elves, and they're a really high priority. What you do need to keep in mind is, to maximize these, you want at least 10 untapped green on turn 1, and ideally like 11 or 12 if you can swing it, which does restrict your choices overall. So
does Avacyn's Pilgrim get put into this group, or does the fact that it makes white mana separate it?
No, I think Avacyn's Pilgrim's actually better if you need the white mana. I just missed it when I was scrolling through.
Okay, so Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Avacyn's Pilgrim, tier 1, and then a tier below that is a Gilded Goose.
Yeah, Gilded Goose is still good, but you can't do the sick 1/3/4 curve. You can do the 1/3 curve, and then you have to play another 3.
Yeah, because the curve you just described with the tracker into Oracle, into Nissa, into Primeval Titan and that's already pretty good, but it gets really stupid if it starts on turn 2.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine, the mana can be a bit awkward, but if you aggressively take lands, turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Fable is just like, that's already game almost, like, especially if you're on the play. Yeah. And this is the thing that green does best, better than any other color. It can actually have unfair starts when you start out with a 1-drop elf. So the gold cards have some powerful ones too.
This is obviously harder, but
yeah. So Atraxa Grand Unifier is an interesting one. So there's way fewer ways to cheat her into play than in Vintage Cube, but Atraxa is actually quite castable, and I consider her one of the premier cards to ramp into if you're playing the 5-color green deck. 7 mana is just that is something you can do even with 4 different colors, and Atraxa is really hard to beat, because what happens is, if they don't remove Atraxa, you win the game, because she's a 7/7 lifelink flying vigilance, and 1 hit kind of stabilizes you, right? Plus, if you're hitting with her, what is that? That means they couldn't remove her this turn, or are they going to secretly be able to next turn? But the thing is, even when they answer Atraxa, you just refilled your hand completely. You looked at the top 10 cards and probably peeled like 3 to 6 of them, depending on the composition of your deck. So Atraxa I find to be very, very good if you can actually get her into play. That's, of course, the joke. But unlike something like, that there, I guess whatever comparison would be just random 6 or 7 mana cards that aren't as good as Atraxa. Like, she does deliver on that promise. Let me just take a look at the Arena Cube just to look at something like
a Titan or something.
Toxrill the Corrosive. Or, whatever. Like, that card is good, but like, you don't just win the game when you cast it. Whereas when you play Atraxa, you kind of do.
Right. And there's cards that cost more more mana that do less, like Cityscape Leveler or something. It's like, okay, sure, but I'd rather have the Atraxa. Yeah. And you mentioned it, but there are precious few ways to get to cheat cards like Atraxa into play. Right, like you got Burial Rights. Kind of that's it. It's like there's just there's Breach. There's a few ways that can happen, but Reanimator is not one of the core supported strategies for this cube. It just doesn't have the cards.
Yeah, Crucius Titan of the Waves is another one. And this is one you're like, I don't even know what that does. Well,
you read this one to me, but when we were prepping for the show, and I'm like, because I was just looking at when we were talking about this sort of signpost uncommon vibe thing with the gold cards, and I was like, all right, let's take a look at black red. I'm like, Blood Tithe Harvester, Crucius, don't know what that does. And I just skipped right over, and Luis is like, you might want to read that one.
So it just got nerfed, actually. It's funny, in this article it says it's a 3/3, but it's actually a 3/1 now. It's 1 black red for a 3/1. And at the beginning of your end step, you may discard a card. If you do, you make a treasure, and then you choose Ambitious or Expedient. If you choose Ambitious, you seek a card with greater mana value than the discarded card. And if you choose Expedient, lesser mana value. So what that means in practice is you discard a land, you choose greater, you get a card that costs 1 or more. You discard a 6-drop, you choose lesser, you get a card that costs 5 or less. That's basically what it does. But it lets you trade a card for a treasure and a card of whatever cost direction you want. You can't guarantee you're going to get a 2-mana card and you discard a 1-mana card, but you can know that you're going to get something more expensive.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is make it to your end step. Like you just cast this and say go, and you're there.
So it kind of effectively has an effect right away. And this is a card it's worth splashing for. It's really, really strong.
Okay. Good to know.
We've also got Expressive Iteration. This is, a classic, a very good value card. And one of the rewards for being kind of like a low curve blue-red deck, where if you have a lot of cards that play to the board or just, are cheap to deploy, Expressive Iteration is very good with them. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, remains good. And the best gold card is Lutri the Spellchaser. So this is the companion whose companion ability is, or companion kind of requirement is, don't have any duplicates among non-lands, which you by definition don't.
You can't, yeah.
so if you're blue or red, Lutri's straight up free and is very good if you've got spells to copy. Look, if you're in like red-green and you open Lutri pack 3, you don't have to take Lutri. It's not like Lutri is oppressively broken. But if you open Lutri early, there's no real justification not to take Lutri and build around it because it's like a free card. Mm-hmm. And I would take Lutri extremely highly as a result. It is one of the better cards in the cube for sure.
For sure. Okay. I'm looking at some of the severe multicolored cards because I guess we should talk about the lands real quick. The mana situation, about, what do the lands look like here? And, as I mentioned before, the fetch lands are not here, and the dual lands come in a few different forms, but they're not the ones that you're used to if you're used to drafting the vintage cube or an older cube. You've got cards like Clifftop Retreat and Inspiring Vantage, right? So these are ones that reward you for playing lands that share the color, like Clifftop Retreat makes red and white, but it ETBs untapped unless you tapped unless you control a mountain or plains, and then Inspiring Vantage, comes in untapped in the first 3 land drops, but then after that it's tapped, for example. The triomes are here, all of them. So that's obviously going to be an important part of a lot of mana bases and something to consider for sure. When it comes to colorless mana fixing, I see Cold Steel Heart here. Guardian Idol doesn't fix your mana. Neither does Mind Stone. Ornithopter of Paradise.
Yep.
Cultivator's Caravan. There's Power Stone and Heater and Archive. Again, those make colorless mana. Solemn Simulacrum's here for a little bit of mana fixing, but it's not a lot, right? You got to work for it a bit here, and your mana, you definitely can play. Like I've played 5-color in this cube a lot, but it's slow and it's clunky. And if you face down a white or red deck, you're dead. I mean, you're playing tap land. Sometimes 2 or 3 out of the first 4 or 5 are tapped, and you're just not going to be able to keep up. So keep that in mind. Yeah, mana fixing is not as good.
I take lands really aggressively when I'm in multicolor decks, which is a lot of the times. And you have to know your mana is going to be a little bit worse than you might be used to. And if you don't take lands aggressively, it's going to be quite bad. You might have to limit your decks and what you're looking at kind of significantly as a result. So just keep that in mind. Like if you're blue-white and you haven't done a good job of either taking or seeing lands, it's not always your fault. You are going to end up in a position where you can't play all the double blue, double white cards that you want. If you want to play a bunch of Skyclave Apparition type cards, then you might have to make some choices and pass up on the Saiba Siphoner. That's like the 2 blue 2/2 that gets a spell back, like that sort of thing.
You ready to jump into a draft?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We are queued up. And Luis, I'm going to let you drive here as far as what our final picks are. If you're watching on YouTube, you can obviously see, but if you're listening, you're driving, you're doing the dishes, you can check it out on YouTube, but I'll try to keep us abreast as I can about what's going on with the packs. Okay, our pack is here, and I'll just go through it really quick. It's Sorin the Mirthless, Tarmogoyf, Esper Sentinel, Ledger Shredder, Gonti, Raugrin Triome, Lair of Hydra, Retrofitter Foundry, Oracle Moldiah, Soul Transfer, Clarion Spirit, Bastion of Remembrance, Tatiova, Thraben Inspector, and Faithless Looting. So there's some of the cards we already talked about straight away here, Luis. You see the Thraby Baby sitting there. There's Oracle Moldiah. Retrofitter Foundry is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I really like Retrofitter and Vintage Cube, but this cube is missing all the cards that make it actually busted. So I don't actually think it's very good.
Stuff like that.
Tolarian Academy, Gaia's Cradle, like just the broken mana engines, basically.
Okay.
So looking at this pack, the cards that stand out to me, Raugrin Triome is an okay pick. Thraben Inspector, you can't really go wrong taking it, honestly. Ledger Shredder, because again, I like the cheap, effective cards. And then Oracle of Moldiah. Also Gonti. Gonti, I think I like above all the black cards. I think as of right now, honestly, I'd probably start by just taking Thraben Inspector. Like, Thraben Inspector is just a card that you never are going to be sad to have. And white is, I think, one of the better colors. This does open the door to being aggro, which, look, I know that you and I aren't going to sit there and draft mono white aggro very often, but if you're playing in the Arena Open and you just want to draft the best deck, if the next card I see is Thalia, I'm probably going to take it.
No, definitely. Yeah, I like narrowing it down between Thraben Inspector, Gonti, and Oracle. And we took the Thraben Inspector. Next pick pack has Magma Opus, Mana Tithe, Agent of Treachery, Brainstorm, Shark Typhoon, Treasure Map, Voracious Hydra, Mishra's Command, Legion Warboss, Gix's Command, Inspiring Vantage, Temple Garden, Spar's Headquarters, Heartless Act.
So after first picking Thraben Inspector, I would obviously be looking for white cards. I don't think I really want to second pick a Mana Tithe all that much.
No, I don't think so either. The cards that catch my eye are Shark Typhoon, Magma Opus, Gix's Command, and maybe one of these lands. I guess we could do Legion Warboss, but you told me no on red-white, so.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't take Legion Warboss.
It's not even
a good
that
card,
great, though, yeah.
But yeah, I honestly, I would lean towards probably just taking, I guess, Spara's Headquarters here. I think just, I don't mind. I like blue-white a lot. I think that, and Thraben Inspector, I mean, it's great in every deck, so I guess that's not too big of that's not saying a whole lot, but I just don't think that moving into another color is as good as, I mean, this kind of moves you into another color, but not in the same way.
Right. So next is Muriel, and then Frost Titan, Crucius, Maul of the Skyclaves, Champion of Wits, Irrigated Farmland, Phyrexian Revoker, Storm the Festival, Bomat Courier, Urborg Scavengers, Ketria Triome, Siren Storm Tamer, and Settle the Wilds.
Yeah, I would just take Crucius here. I think it's the best card by so much that getting a third pick Crucius, it means there's a couple different things it could mean. One is it could mean that you're getting passed to by someone who's not playing black-red, which I think seems fairly likely. The other is that the person passing to you doesn't know how good it is, in which case you don't really even mind if you're in the same colors.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that would have been me. Also, I did want to... Go ahead.
Oh, this also could have been a pack that, just for argument, had Fable and Swords to Plowshares, to start with. Sure.
All right, well, we'll take Crucius. So we've got Thraben Inspector, Spar's Headquarters, Crucius. This is the staying open style of draft, of course.
Well, we just took a blue-white-green land and then took a red-black card, but I think I would look at it as like, hey, we're heading maybe into red-black here because we got access to an awesome red-black card.
Next pack up is pick 4, Shatter Skull Smashing, Hydrate Krasis, Warzone Duplicator, Invasion of Fiora, Null Priest of Oblivion, Nantuko Slicer, Karuga, Golos, Cave of the Frost Dragon, Dauntless Bodyguard, Sheoldred's Edict, and a Llanowar Elves.
Well, I think the time to speculate has passed. I would not take Llanowar Elves here. I would either take Golos or Shatter Skull Smashing out of this pack.
Yeah, I would take Golos.
I don't like the black cards and the red cards that much, but there's also not like a great blue or white card. Just take Golos. Who knows? Maybe we'll splash Crucius in a 5-color deck. I think that is a legit way to go about things.
Yeah, I think that if you do play 5-color in formats like these, you have to do responsible 5-color, where it's not just literally every mana symbol every time with no regard. It's more like 3 base colors with a couple of opportunistic splashes off of them. All right, next is Elish Norn Grand Cenobite, so the Big Mama. Disallow, Malevolent Hermit, Burn Down the House, Experimental Frenzy, Deeproot Wayfinder, Waterlogged Grove, Blessed Alliance, Drown and Ichor, Palladiumir, and Repeal.
So the best card in this pack, I believe, is Malevolent Hermit, but I don't think we're heading that direction so much. I think given the Golos pick, I would be inclined to consider Burn Down the House or Elish Norn.
Just go for the big powerful stuff.
And I think I'd take Burn Down the House because you could also ignore the Thraben Inspector and Spar's Headquarters. With Golos, Crucius, and Burn Down the House, you could be black-red midrange. Yeah. Like those cards are all fine in that deck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I like Burn Down the House a lot too. It definitely adapts itself to the game where you can be quite far behind and catch up, or you can seal up a victory. Okay, next pack has Kenrith Return King, if we want to go 5-color, Sphinx's Revelation, the Elder Dragon War, Fauna Shaman, Gilded Goose, Botanical Sanctum, Blood Chief's Thirst, Bushwhack, Negate, and a Royal Eruption. I would just take Eruption, but...
Yeah, I like Royal Eruption here. I think that taking a cheap card is a lot better than taking an expensive card in this spot.
Yeah, we've got right now Thraben Inspector, Crucius, Burn Down the House, Golos, and Spar's Headquarters. So a 1, a 3, 2 5s, and a land. So picking up 1s and 2s and some 3s is really important. So we'll do that. So we'll take Royal Eruption. Next up is Invasion of Gobakon, Sea Double, Tenacious Underdog, Once Upon a Time, Simian Simulacrum, Hangerback Walker, Takanuma, Flames of the Firebrand, and Avacyn's Pilgrim. Man, I guess we just take Flames. Like, is Tenacious Underdog a card?
I think Tenacious Underdog is okay, but I think I would lean towards just taking Flames. C Double is a great card, but again, not in a position to take it here. I think until I get a signal otherwise, I believe we're supposed to kind of fit into red-black, or at least base red. We've gotten past some decent red cards here.
Okay. So we'll take Flames of the Firebrand. And next up is Vivian Reed, Nahiri the Harbinger, Atraxa, Lion/Mayor of Everbook, Precursor Golem, Sunbay Canyon, and Touch the Spirit Realm. Ouch.
I would slam Atraxa here. And we're kind of back on the Golos plan. Atraxa is exactly the follow-up to Golos.
Okay.
Right?
I wish we would have gotten one of those elves. Like, are we going to be green is the question I have.
We can see we don't have to be. You could be kind of red-black deck splashing these cards depending on the lands and fixing you get.
Okay. So our Spar's Headquarters definitely pays off for Atraxa if we're hard casting it. Covers 3 of the 4 colors we need. Okay, so we'll add Atraxa Grand Unifier to our deck. Next up is our Wheel Pack, which has Tarmogoyf, Esper Sentinel, Retrofitter Foundry, Lair of the Hydra, Clarion Spirit, Bastion of Remembrance, and Tatiova Benthic Druid.
I'm not a big Tatiova fan anymore. Like, it's just too expensive for what you get.
And Lair
honestly, I might just take the Retrofitter. This deck doesn't look like it's got much to spend its mana on.
Yeah,
we don't have actually fine
to do early anyway, so we might as well start churning out some 1/1s. All right, we'll take Retrofitter Foundry on our wheel. Next is there's Gix's Command, Mishra's Command, Voracious Hydra, Treasure Map, Inspiring Vantage, and Temple Garden.
I think in this position, you just start taking duels. I would take Temple Garden here. And I like the shock lands a lot more than the fast lands in this style of deck.
Okay. The shock lands are the sort of de facto duels for this cube.
And I'm just like, yes, we have 3 red cards, but I'm not convinced which direction we're at. Oh, wow. We wield Ketria Triumph.
Yes.
That's a pretty easy pick over Urborg Scavengers, which is a good card. Mm-hmm. But I think that we haven't gotten past enough black to be like heavy black-red. That just hasn't kind of materialized, even though we got that Crucius. Right. So I would just take Ketria Triome here. And our red-based 5-color with a good lands, I mean, that actually can work fine. You just have to prioritize early red removal. And look, this pack with 4 cards left, there's a cheap black card we don't care about, a cheap white card we don't care about, and Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah.
So
nice.
that's a great pickup too, because Krasis, if you need to play it on 4 mana, is a play. 2/2 flyer, draw a card, gain a life. But then on 10 mana is a great play.
Wow. And look at this. Pack 1, pick 13, Elish Norn, Blessed Alliance, and Palladium Mirror.
I do like Elish Norn, but I'd probably take Blessed Alliance here. I don't know. I'm not a big Palladium Mirror fan.
I know, it's really hard because
I just feel like it doesn't survive very often.
Right. I'm going to take Bushwhack. Pack 1, pick 14. And then, wow, we got Avis's Pilgrim last pick. So pack our deck right now is Avis's Pilgrim, Thraben Inspector, Bushwhack, Retrofitter Foundry, Blessed Alliance, Royal Eruption, Flames of the Firebrand, Crucius, Burn Down the House, Golos, Atraxa, Hydroid Krasis, and 3 lands. Next is Pack 2, pick 1, In the Trenches, Valky, Bloodthirsty Adversary, Rekindling Phoenix, Craterhoof, Pelt Collector, Professional Facebreaker, Glorybringer, Soul Servitude, Commit to Memory, Prismari Command, Igonjo, Concealed Courtyard, Stomping Ground, and Armored Scrapgorger.
Oh, this is an easy Glorybringer. You were already hovering right over it.
I'm there with you, buddy. I want the Glorybringer.
It's the best card in the pack and the color that we are most tied to. Because to summarize it, because we just had a bunch of cards. Once we take this Glorybringer, we've got 4 mono red cards, a red black card, and then Atraxa, Hydroid Krasis, Thraben Inspector, Blessed Alliance. So we're kind of like mostly red white splashing the other colors, but we'll kind of let the packs dictate which colors we end up heavy in, except for red. We've got good reds removal on 2, 3, and 5 mana, and actually a second one on 5 mana now with Glorybringer. So I like where we're at. All
right, next is Saiba Siphoner, Junji, Atsushi, Ishkana, Vorinclex. Wow, that is a heck of a names run right there. Soldier of the Pantheon, Thassa's Intervention, Maelstrom Pulse, Jagantha, Overgrown Tomb, Selfless Savior, Usher of the Fallen, Abrade, and Anguished Unmaking. Can I just take a Braid?
Just snap off a Braid here. Yeah. Abrade's nice too because this deck doesn't really care about going face, and killing a random like treasure map or something can be pretty valuable.
Right. And then, of course, the baseline for it is to let us not get ran over by aggressive decks. Right. So we have Thraben Inspector, Avis's Pilgrim, Bushwhack is in here right now, Blessed Alliance. What are we thinking about these early cards?
I think we're not that likely to play the green ones, but we'll see. Like, it just really depends on, like, if we get like a Wrath of God or Day of Judgment, then maybe we want to lean towards red white. If we get another good cheap green card, like we can kind of see what are we going to pair with red. Well, we just kind of got the answer to that question.
So we opened up Swords to Plowshares and other cards.
Third pick. It just means the 2 people to your left aren't playing white or just didn't really know how good Swords to Plowshares was. That's always on the table. So like I would probably hide the green cards that you have, the cheap ones, because right now our 1 and 2 mana plays, Thraben Inspector, Swords to Plowshares, Blessed Alliance, Abrade, Royal Eruption. That's a lot of great removal at red white. That's
great. And Flames of the Firebrand is our 3 too. I mean, we're not getting ran over.
And then this is where actually Retrofitter Foundry might have a home. I'm actually getting kind of talking myself into it because imagine you lead with Retrofitter Foundry and just have a handful of removal plus Foundry. Every turn they don't do something, you make a token and go up that chain. And when they do, you just kill their thing. So
yeah, nice.
And then you have Atraxa and Krasis to refill. I don't know if the Crucius is going to make it. It's possible that we have no black lands and we have all the other colors. It's possible we just don't play Crucius, which is totally fine.
Next is Pack 2, pick 4. It's Sarah Paragon, Forceful Cultivator, Karn, Scion of Urza, March of Otherworldly Light, Fiery Islet, Sacred Foundry, Crawling Barrens, Mutavault, Nightclub Bouncer, Obliterating Bolt, Opt, and Big Score.
This is, I think, a pretty easy Sacred Foundry. Like, these are the 2 colors you are the most of. Yeah. Just take the dual of those colors.
Makes sense. Where are you at on Sarah Paragon?
Really good in the right deck. This is definitely not the right deck for it, though. Yeah. If you have a lot of cheap plays where you can play it, I'm a little spoiled because it works really well with things like fetch lands, but there's just not those in this cube. So Sarah Paragon, it does lack a little bit when you look at that.
All right, next is Archangel Elspeth, Day of Judgment, Seasoned Pyromancer, Rishkar, Halana and Elena, Hive of the Eye Tyrant, Rootbound Craig, Light Up the Stage, Duskwatch Recruiter, Strangle, and Ornithopter of Paradise.
Yeah, we just slammed Seasoned Pyromancer, and honestly, we're just red-white mid-range at this point. Like, maybe we do splash Atraxa, Hydrate Krasis, if our mana lends itself to it, but you're going to get enough playables at this rate that you could just be straight red-white mid-range, and that is a totally fine archetype to be in.
What's going to be left in this pack?
Once 7 other people take cards.
Yeah. There's 3 cards left.
I guess Light Up the Stage.
Craig, one of these double white cards, and Light Up the Stage. Okay.
Yeah, probably not getting Day of Judgment back, sadly.
All right, next is Pack 2, Pick 6. Selfless Spirit, Welcoming Vampire, Lightning Strike, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and Portable Hole in our current colors. There's also an Eater of Virtue, as well as a useful dual land with Clifftop Retreat. There's also a Sun Petal Grove.
Yeah, I like taking Clifftop Retreat here.
Just get our mana right.
Because at this point, you're looking more and more like you're just going to be red-white, and just we danced around a bit with some of the other colors, but if we just cut all those things, like we could still play the Golos and maybe play like a land or two to make it so Golos can get to 5 in a pinch.
If we get like a tricolor land with black in it or something. Yeah,
but for the most part, like it looks pretty good to just take red and white cards here. And this pack has one of the cards I actually really like, which is Sun Titan. So there's 3 white cards in the pack: Heliod, Mikaeus the Lunarch, and Sun Titan, as well as a red card, Plarg, Dean of Chaos, which isn't very good. But Sun Titan here with Seasoned Pyromancer, maybe if they kill Thraben Inspector, Retrofitter Foundry, or Crucius potentially if we end up splashing just Crucius. Maybe we pick up a couple red-black or black-white lands. And I think Sun Titan is the kind of card that can close out games after you've killed all the early stuff. Oh, furthering the Black Splash, Lingering Souls is in this pack, 8th pick. See, I think there's edge to be gained because there's people who don't realize if you're blue-white, you should be taking this and trying to pick up a land or two to splash it. It's that powerful. Yeah. Just like we here, I think at this point should take Lingering Souls and now try to splash Crucius and Lingering Souls.
Yeah, now it's worth noting we are passing Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, because we're like a mid-range deck. It's actually going to slow us down.
Tons of spells in our deck, yeah.
Next is our wheel pack. In the Trenches came back. Igonjo came back. Oh, there's a Concealed Courtyard.
Yeah, I like Concealed Courtyard over Igonjo. I don't want to discard my lands. I want to play them. And getting a black land here, like ideally, if we get like 3 black lands, then splashing those cards is just not going to cost us all that much. And we can play Crucius and Lingering Souls to create effect.
Okay, next is Soldier of the Pantheon, Selfless Savior, Usher of the Fallen. And there is an Anguished Unmaking here as well.
I don't think Anguished Unmaking is even that good. Honestly, I might just take Usher of the Fallen because some games you'll just open on Usher, attack, make a token, kill their next thing, and you're like pretty happy with the card as a standalone.
Yeah, and it's also an easy cut. Oh, here's an interesting one. So Rabble Rousing is still here. There's also Lorehold Command, though, in our primary colors.
Yeah, and Sune's Intervention.
Yeah.
I like Lorehold Command. I think that Lorehold Command is probably the best of them. It does a lot of different things. They're all pretty good.
All right. 4 cards left, and 2 of them are white, 2 of them are red. Sarah Paragon, March of Otherworldly Light, Obliterating Bolt, and Big Score.
Oh, this is close. Honestly, I could make arguments for any of them. I guess Obliterating Bolt's probably the overall best. I think
it's the strongest. Maybe we could use Sarah Paragon. 3 cards left. Halana and Elena, Rootbound Craig, and Light Up the Stage were the ones.
those are the ones we predicted, I think.
So there you go.
I guess I would take Rootbound Crag because you just never know where you're going to end up. I don't think this deck's going to play Light Up the Stage.
And then do we want Selfless Spirit or Dragon's Rage Channeler?
I guess I would take the Channeler.
I think so too.
Channeler's good. Oh, Razor Verge for free. Sure.
For free, yep. Okay, pack 3, pick 1. Sorry, this is going a little quick, but I can stop reading every card now and just read the notables. We've got Restoration Angel, Rampaging Raptor, Seal Away.
I would take Resto here. You have one really good target, which is Seasoned Pyromancer.
Hey.
You also have Thraben Inspector as a good target. And then Sun Titan and Golos are good targets, but I don't really count the 5s and 6s all that much.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I'm really happy with Resto, and then hopefully we can pick up like one or two more cards in this pack that synergize with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, Resto holds its own, even without the strong synergies. But when you get the good stuff going, it's amazing, and it's rare to not have it do something. So we'll take Restoration Angel pack 3, pick 1.
And I think we've done a good job of taking cheap removal, where I don't really feel like you had to take Seal away there at all. You have a Braid, Obliterating Bolt, Royal Eruption, and a Goldspan Dragon. That stands well above the Rip Apart that's going to table and the Unholy Heat. Those are and maybe a Maria's Call. But yeah, Goldspan's perfect for this deck. It's just curving it, removal into Goldspan is a really easy way to win games.
What do you think about Sword of Forge and Frontier?
I think it's good if you have enough creatures to play with it, like that you are looking for equipment, but it's kind of an expensive card. It's 3 and 2, and I wouldn't play it in every deck, certainly.
Taking Goldspan, as we mentioned, though.
Oh, yeah. Goldspan's a great pickup. I mean,
I'd love to get Unholy Heat or Amaria's Call back.
I think Rip Apart's going to come back, like almost for sure.
Oh, yeah,
that's a good call. We're the only red-white player. So for sure. Maybe we'll get one of the other two back, but Rip Apart, I would be surprised if it didn't come back.
Okay, pack 3, pick 3. Realm Cloak Giant, that's the one that's sweeper. Adeline, Resplendent Cathar, Ephemerate. There's also Kamano faces Kakazan, but we're not really that deck. I love taking an Adeline here.
I think so. I think picking up the late Usher of the Fallen and Dragon's Rage Channeler makes me feel like we could put Adeline in our deck and it would be solid. I don't think we're an Ephemerate deck right now. Yeah. And at this point, Golos isn't making the cut most likely. I mean, it's possible, but who knows? But my guess is it's a little less likely, and we're firmly in mid-range. We've got our draws that can attack with Adeline, into Resto. Yep. We've got our removal spell into Burn down the house, into Sun Titan. We got the whole range here. I
also like that Adeline has 4 toughness, and it can actually block decently. Like, it's not a disaster if you're on your back foot. Okay, next is Captain Eberhart. Which one is this? 1/1/2 double strike spells. From main cards you drew this turn cost one more. Oh, that's actually really annoying. And then Wrath of God, and then there's Urabrask's Forge.
I mean, look, we just took Adeline, so of course we're going to take Wrath of God now.
We do want it. We do want it, though, right? Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're red white mid range, to the core.
So the joke that Luis is making here is basically like every hand that we draw will dictate, like whether we're trying to get aggressive or trying to play back. Ooh, nice. Ooh. The Wandering Emperor came up first up. There's also Collective Effort, Grim Lavamancer, and Rada's Firebrand. Yeah. But man, I really like Wandering Emperor.
Oh yeah, Wandering Emperor is great because it's great no matter which of our draws we have. But like Dragon's Rage Channeler is good in the aggressive draws. Wrath is good in the controlling draws. They don't synergize. Wandering Emperor is just good. Like
it's just you're happy it adapts itself to our misshapen game plan. It's really funny. All right, Wandering Emperor, join the team. Next up, we've got Felidar Retreat, Spikefield Hazard, and Older Ravengard Marshal. Which one is
it's a really weird card. 3 mana, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, one of your other non-token creatures gets double team, which means when it attacks, you draw a copy of it. I don't think we have enough creatures to really make this work. I'd probably just take Spikefield Hazard. It's a fun card.
I'm thinking too.
It's a way to have extra lands in your kind of control deck.
Okay, pack 3, pick 7. Wedding Announcement, Dragon Master Outcast, and Lyra Dawnbringer.
I like Wedding Announcement here. Wedding Announcement's a perfect way to make them overextend into Wrath. You cast Wedding Announcement, you make a 1/1. They play their other creature. Turn 4, you just Wrath, end of turn, get a 1/1.
It's also great with Adeline.
Yeah, it's good in your aggressive plan too. I don't think the Dragon's Rage Channeler is that likely to make the cut. We're getting enough playables that, jokes aside, I think we're going to end up playing just a higher curve controlling deck. Not actually even playing Adeline, most likely, and not playing Usher of the Fallen. Like, picking up Wrath of God, Wandering Emperor, Wedding Announcement, like we just don't need to be doing that.
I think I'm going to take Nahiri's Warcrafting over Play with Fire here. Normally I like Play with Fire better, but this thing does take out Planeswalkers.
I think Key to the Archive is also a pretty good card, but
I didn't even see it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know that was the pick. Actually, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So are we splashing the black? Do we have enough fixing? Where is our fixing at? Can we take? I think we can take this on burial rights.
And we're not giving up anything for it anyway.
There's
We have
no card
concealed.
we're gonna play.
We have concealed courtyard. That's it.
The rip apart did in fact wheel, and I think we probably do want it. Like, I don't think Guardian Idol is like a huge priority for us.
No, I think we do want it for sure. This sort of Forge and Frontier came around, but as Louis said, not a high priority. And then we did wheel the Ephemerate, but we're still not really there, right?
No, I would take Realm Cloak Giant. Another Wrath is fine. So the main thing this deck is going to have trouble with is going to be a creatureless control deck.
Yes,
but
for sure.
I think we can take Urabrask's Forge here, and that there's some like a blue black deck cannot beat that card.
Okay, so we can put that in the board.
Well, or you could main deck it. I don't think it would be crazy to do so.
Okay,
like you can. You have 3 Wrath, so just turn 3 Forge and then Wrath is a totally fine game plan to have.
I'm going to take Voice here.
Yeah, Voice of Resurgence and Bloodbraid Elf for free.
Yeah, we actually have a bunch of free green sources, so if we have a matchup where we think that Voice is good, I think it's just going to be better than that double strike giver. I mean, look, we have a Razorverge ticket in our board for crying out loud, and we still have multiple green sources in the main as well.
I think you got like 5 green sources for free.
Yeah.
Or 4, I guess. I think looking at where we ended up, my guess is we just cut the black, cut the Golos. We've got 2 red-white duels, and we just play like straight red-white. And cut like Usher of the Fallen, cut Adeline. And I guess you have to cut the Lingering Souls and just maybe play an 18th land.
We could play Collective Effort, Adeline, Usher. Do we want the 18th land? I guess I could put the Urabrask's Forge.
Yeah, no, I like Urabrask's Forge more than Adeline. It's kind of a similar card, but I think it works a little better with our Wraths because we have a lot of those.
Also, we do have Spikefield Hazard.
Oh, it's a pseudo 18th land. Perfect.
Right. Do we want Retrofitter Foundry?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good. I would cut Lingering Souls as the last cut here.
There it is, yeah. Okay, so here's our deck. Staying open, both with cards and open-minded. It's 1-drops or Swords to Plowshares, Thraben Inspector. Love that. Spikefield Hazard, Retrofitter Foundry. 2s are Blessed Alliance, Abrade, Obliterating Bolt, Royal Eruption, Rip Apart. 3s are Wedding Announcement, Flames of the Firebrand, Urabrask's Forge, Nahiri's Warcrafting, and Seasoned Pyromancer. 4s are Restoration Angel, The Wandering Emperor, and Wrath of God. 5s are Burn Down the House, Glorybringer, Goldspan Dragon, and Lorehold Command. 6s and 7 is Sun Titan, as well as Realm Cloaked Giant. And then currently we have 8 Mountains, 7 Plains, a Cliff Top Retreat, and a Sack Red Found Dry.
I like it. I actually think this deck is great because look at it this way. We've got Swords to Plowshares, Glorybringer, Goldspan Dragon, Wandering Emperor as just straight up, awesome cards. Seasoned Pyromancer too. That's like 5 cards that I are in the, top whatever percent of the cube, but it's a small number. We've got a bunch of removal, cheap removal. Like we have 7 removal spells that cost 2 or less, and 3 sweepers and Wrath, Burn Down the House, Realm Cloak Giant, as well as Nahiri's Warcrafting, Swords to Plowshares as big creature removal, and Blessed Alliance works in that realm as well. The main weakness of this deck will be like a blue-black control deck. This deck will struggle against that. But I think this deck's going to do great against any creature-based deck. And I think the combination of like Wedding Announcement, Wandering Emperor, Retrofitter Foundry, Goldspan Dragon, like you can beat a removal-based deck by playing all those cards. I would have loved to see like a Chandra Torch of Defiance. That would have been a great card for this deck. But I actually think like imagine you are playing against that feared blue-black deck. If you lead on turn 1 Retrofitter Foundry, you might just beat them with that card.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It makes a 1/1. They're not going to want to use removal to kill it. Then that 1/1 turns into a 4/4 over the next 2 turns. And in the late game, you're making like about a 4/4 every turn or like 2 1/1s or whatever. If they're not killing you, that's going to be really good. And you can kill their stuff. Like you got to save Swords to Plowshares for the Scarab God, but other than that, like they play a Planeswalker that you've got Nahiri's Warcrafting and Rip Apart to try to pressure it. End of Turn Resto or the Wandering Emperor are all great. So also Urabrask's Forge is another. The reason I like main decking Urabrask's Forge is it's going to be your best card in your worst matchups. It's just like Retrofitter Foundry, which it makes an X1 every turn. It's like a blue-red control deck that's playing against you and you're making a 4-1 and attacking, then a 5-1 and attacking. Like they're going to eventually just lose to that.
Totally. Yeah. Also interesting against the even controlling decks. Look at our 5s. Burn down the house, both of the dragons and Lorehold Command. Like that's a lot of haste. Yeah. That's just a lot of damage coming at your face. And if we can keep them off balance at all, we can just get some slams in with these and do it.
Well, I'm curious to see how this deck does because I actually think it is quite good.
Yeah, I would take this deck in the Arena Open. It's worth noting, by the way, that the Open is draft on both days too. So don't get it confused and think that you need to learn Sealed. Everything we've covered here will be applicable for both days. Okay, Luis, let's call it a show there for our bonus episode of a little primer for the Arena Cube. It's safe to assume that they'll continue to do these Arena Cube Opens as well. So this will be information that hopefully will carry over at least for a while until they drastically redo the cube. If you want to find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. We're just going to say thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
I wanted to highlight a couple of the cooler combos that have emerged in the Vintage Cube over the last couple days playing, especially with this new cube on Magic Online. Some made possible by new additions to the cube. Some maybe were there and just kind of discovered them. But there's some cool ones. One is if you have Displacer Kitten and Tameo. Tameo is the 2 blue-green planeswalker whose -3 is return a card from your graveyard to your hand. I have a deck that had Tameo, Displacer Kitten, and both Black Lotus and Lion's Eye Diamond.
Okay.
And either one works. So what happens is you play one of the 0-mana artifacts and you blink Tameo. Right? And then you sack the artifact with the kitten. Then you sack the artifact for 3 mana. You use Tameo's -3 to bring it back. You play it again. You blink Tameo again. You can make infinite mana and infinite storm. And then because Tameo's -3 brings back any card, if you have any card in your graveyard that kills them, you get to just bring it back and kill them.
Oh, so if it does 1 damage, you could just say, do this 20 times and kill you.
Yeah, because if it's a non-creature spell, it can also blink Tameo to flicker it. So like a lightning bolt would do the trick.
That's cool.
Every time you cast it, you get another trigger. Displacer Kitten has a lot of combos. It's pretty easy. Another one which I've really liked is in the vein of Retrofitter Foundry is Retrofitter Foundry with either Gaia's Cradle or Tolarian Academy or both. It's actually funny because it makes 1/1 artifact creatures. And then Candelabra of Tawnos and Saheeli, the blue-red Saheeli that makes a token every time you cast a spell. Mm-hmm. These all kind of combo together to just generate tons of tokens and mana, and it's really easy to kind of convert that into a win. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of new lands combos, and I had a really funny loop. So I had a deck that had Fast Bond and a ton of draw 7s. I had Memory Jar, Time Twister, Echo of Eons, and the Sail to the West, the 2 blue-green, discard your hand, draw 7, as well as a Mystical Tutor. And I had Oracle and Courser and Zuranorb to gain the life back. So I had all these like draw 7, fast bond, keep drawing 7s and draw 7s, play more lands, sack them to Zuranorb, all that, right? I was able to assemble this combo twice. If you have out a Gaia's Cradle that taps for 3 mana, Life from the Loam, Fast Bond, Zuranorb, and then one of the lands that sacks like Horizon Canopy, what you can do is you tap Cradle for 3, you play Horizon Canopy, you spend 1 of that to sack it, to bring back Life from the Loam, to dredge it. Cast Loam, sack them both to Zuranorb, or sack the Loam to Zuranorb, or the Cradle to Zuranorb plus another land. Loam back those 2 lands plus another land, and you just keep looping that until you run out of cards in your deck. At which point, I cast one of the draw 7s to reshuffle. And again, that sounds like, why are you telling me about a combo that requires Fast Spawn, Zuranorb, Cradle that taps for 3, Horizon Canopy? It's because this deck just had 15 of these cards and almost any 3 of them comboed. Fast Bond was usually among them. That one is very important. But like part of the reason I like the lands deck is that you just have all of these combos that kind of like stack in various ways. And then you just need to draw a combination of them. I also was able to use in a different Displacer Kitten deck, you threw the Breach, attack them, then play a spell to keep the fatty with Displacer Kitten, which is pretty funny. And
that's cool.
Overall, there's just a ton of new kind of, like I said, emerging gameplay. It's my favorite thing. Like Chrome hosts Seed Shark, right? Makes an incubate token. That's another card that with Academy or Cradle just spits out a ton of things. It's better with Academy because you don't have to wake up the tokens. But like you end up in a spot where you're just getting tons and tons of value off of just playing a spell, making a token. Now you tap for more mana so you can play more spells. And
that's awesome.
There's just a lot of cool stuff going on. And the cool thing is you don't need to know all these things when you even put all these cards in. You might know some of them. Players will figure it out, and then you can see which of the ones work and which ones don't.